The Crystal Bay Yacht Club had never looked more beautiful. White tablecloths draped every surface, champagne flutes caught the late afternoon sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly beyond the terrace. My father's retirement party was exactly what he deserved. After 42 years of building Peterson and Associates from a two-person accounting firm into one of the region's most respected financial consultancies, I stood near the bar, nursing a glass of sparkling water, watching my family work the room. My mother floated between tables in her silver gown, accepting congratulations. My older sister Jennifer held court with the board members, her husband nodding along to every business conversation, and my uncle Richard, Dad's younger brother and the firm's COO, commanded the center of the room like he owned it, which I suppose he thought he did. "Sarah, darling, you look lost." My Aunt Patricia appeared at my elbow, her perfume overwhelming. "Why aren't you mingling? There are so many important people here." "Just observing," I said with a smile. "It's Dad's night." She patted my arm with pitying affection. "Well, once you finish that library science degree, maybe you'll have more to contribute to these conversations. It's never too late to find your path." I was 31 years old with a master's degree in information systems and a portfolio that would make most venture capitalists weep with envy, but I'd learned years ago that correcting Patricia was pointless. Let them think I was the family disappointment, the youngest daughter who'd walked away from the family business to find herself in graduate school. The reality was considerably different. "Speech time," someone called out, and the room quieted as my father took the microphone. He looked distinguished in his navy suit, silver hair perfectly groomed, smile warm and genuine. 30 years ago, my brother Richard joined Peterson and Associates," Dad began. "He's been my right hand, my confidant, and the person who'll carry this firm into its next chapter. I couldn't be prouder to leave our legacy in his capable hands." Applause filled the room. Richard stood, buttoning his jacket, soaking in the admiration. "But family isn't just about business," Dad continued. "My wife Eleanor has been my foundation. My daughter Jennifer has given me two beautiful grandchildren, and my youngest Sarah, well, she's always marched to her own drum. We love her for it." More polite applause. I caught Jennifer's sympathetic glance across the room, the one that said "Poor Sarah, always the odd one out." I smiled, and raised my glass. Let them think whatever they wanted. The formal speeches ended, and the party shifted into networking mode. Investors clustered in corners, discussing portfolios and market trends. Junior associates laughed too loudly at senior partners' jokes. The string quartet played something classical and forgettable. I was helping myself to shrimp cocktail when I heard Richard's voice booming from the terrace. "Gentlemen, let me tell you about a spectacular opportunity." I glanced outside. Richard stood with four men I recognized from various investment firms around the city. He had that look on his face, the one he got when closing a deal. "The Peterson family beach house," Richard announced, gesturing grandly. "Prime ocean front, 3,500 square feet, private beach access. We're listing it next week." My hand paused halfway to the cocktail sauce. "The market's absolutely on fire right now," Richard continued. "Should get 3 million easily, maybe 3.2 if we get bidding competition." One of the investors, a silver-haired man named Thomas Winters, leaned forward with interest. "That's the property up in Seacliff, the one with the wraparound deck." "The very same." Richard pulled out his phone, swiping through photos. "Been in the family for 30 years. Eleanor's been after us to sell for ages. Too much maintenance, she says. With Dad retiring, perfect timing." I set down my plate and walked slowly toward the terrace doors. "My firm would be very interested," another investor said. "I've been looking for oceanfront for my daughter's wedding venue business." "I'll get you the details," Richard promised. "Actually, my realtor should be here any minute with the preliminary listing materials. We can discuss terms right now, if you're serious." Jennifer materialized beside me, champagne in hand. "Can you believe Uncle Richard is finally selling the beach house? Mom's been asking for years. All that upkeep for a place we barely use." "Barely use," I repeated carefully. "Well, you know how it is. We're all too busy. Uncle Richard goes up, maybe twice a year. Dad hasn't been in ages. Such a waste, really, but at least now it'll benefit the whole family." "Benefit how?" Jennifer lowered her voice conspiratorially. "The money gets split evenly, 4 ways. Dad, Uncle Richard, Mom and the estate trust. Each of us gets a nice chunk. Mark and I are thinking of finally renovating our kitchen." I watched Richard through the glass, holding court with his investors, already spending money that wasn't his. "Jenny, I said slowly. Who told you the house was being sold? Uncle Richard, obviously. He handles all the family properties, always has. She squeezed my arm. Don't worry, Sarah. I'm sure they'll make sure you get a little something too. Maybe enough for a down payment on a condo once you graduate. Before I could respond, the yacht club's events manager approached Richard's group on the terrace, gesturing toward the main entrance. Through the windows, I saw a woman in a professional burgundy suit entering the building, leather portfolio under her arm. Diane Morrison, one of the top real estate agents in the county, specializing in luxury oceanfront properties. Also, as of 4 weeks ago, my listing agent. Is that Richard's realtor? Jennifer asked. She looks expensive. She is. I watched Diane scan the room, her eyes finding mine. I gave her the slightest nod. Richard swept back inside, calling over his shoulder to the investors. Gentlemen, my agent has arrived. Let me grab those listing materials, and we'll talk numbers. He intercepted Diane near the entrance, his smile broad and confident. Perfect timing. I've got 4 serious potential buyers right here. Do you have the paperwork? Diane's professional mask didn't slip, but I saw the micro expression of confusion cross her face. Mr. Peterson, I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding at all. Richard gestured toward the terrace. I told you on the phone. List the Seacliff property. 3 million minimum. Let's move fast while the market's hot. Sir, I don't represent you on any Seacliff property. Richard's smile tightened. What are you talking about? We spoke last week. We spoke about a different property entirely. Diane opened her portfolio, pulling out documents, and I need to clarify something important. My mother appeared, drawn by the commotion. Richard, is everything all right? More family members drifted over. Jennifer, Patricia, several cousins, the investors from the terrace. Richard's face was reddening. There must be some confusion with your files. The Peterson Beach House, 3,500 square feet, Seacliff Drive. I'm aware of the property, Diane said calmly. I'm actually the listing agent for it. Exactly. So if you could just, for Miss Sarah Harrison. Diane turned, meeting my eyes across the room. Who hired me 4 weeks ago to prepare a confidential listing? The room went very, very quiet. Richard laughed, but it sounded forced. That's ridiculous. Sarah doesn't own the beach house. It's a family property, has been for 30 years. Actually, I said, stepping forward, it's been my property for 6 years. My mother's champagne flute trembled in her hand. Sarah, what are you talking about? The beach house. I bought it in 2019. I looked at Richard. From the family trust, actually. You signed the sale paperwork yourself, Uncle Richard. His face went from red to gray. That was a different transaction. That was for the maintenance reserve fund. No. I kept my voice calm, almost gentle. That was a straight purchase. 1.8 million. Paid in full from my investment accounts. You processed it as COO of the family trust. Jennifer looked between us, confused. Sarah, you can't have 1.8 million. You're still in school. I graduated 4 years ago, I said. Master's in Information Systems from Stanford. I've been working in tech venture capital since. Diane Morrison pulled out another document. Miss Harrison, shall I share the property details with the room, or would you prefer to handle this privately? Now is fine. She cleared her throat professionally. The Seacliff property, purchased by Miss Sarah Harrison in August 2019, for $1.8 million. Title transferred cleanly from the Peterson Family Trust to Miss Harrison's personal holdings. The property has been maintained through a management company she hired, and she's authorized a listing price of $3.3 million. Diane glanced at Richard. I certainly did not agree to represent Mr. Peterson in selling property he doesn't own. Thomas Winters, the investor, let out a low whistle. That's quite a return in 6 years. The Seacliff market has appreciated considerably. I agreed. My father had gone very still, his retirement party forgotten. Sarah, I don't understand. Where did you get that kind of money? I started a tech consulting firm in graduate school, I explained. Simple information architecture services for startups. It grew faster than I expected. By the time I graduated, I had 12 corporate clients and revenue pushing 2 million annually. 2 million. My mother's voice was faint. That was 2020. I sold the consulting firm in 2021 for 18 million. Used part of that to start a venture capital fund, focused on information systems and AI integration. The fund's current assets under management are approximately 200 million. Dead silence. Jennifer's husband Mark finally spoke. $200 million, give or take. I shrugged. The market fluctuates. I also own a 12% stake in a cloud security company that's planning an IPO next year. That should add another 40 million or so. Patricia gripped the back of a chair. But you drive a 10-year-old Honda. It's reliable. You live in that tiny apartment near the university. It's convenient. I didn't mention that I also owned the entire building, along with 3 others in the neighborhood. Some revelations could wait. Richard had recovered some of his color, but now he looked furious. If you've owned the beach house for 6 years, why didn't you tell anyone? You never asked. I met his eyes. And frankly, Uncle Richard, you've been using the property every month without my permission. I've been tracking it through the security system I installed. His jaw tightened. That's family property. I have a right. You have no rights to my private property. My voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. I've documented every unauthorized entry, every party you've thrown, every time you've told investors and clients they could use the family beach house for corporate retreats. Diane Morrison added quietly, I've advised Miss Harrison that she has grounds for trespassing charges if she chooses to pursue them. My father found his voice. Sarah, sweetheart, why didn't you just tell us? That was the question, wasn't it? I looked around the room at my family, at the people who'd patted my head and told me to find a nice administrative job, who'd smiled sadly when I chose graduate school over joining the family firm, who'd assumed my silence meant I had nothing to say, because you never wanted to hear it, I said simply. When I started my consulting business, I tried to tell Mom. She said it was a nice hobby. When I sold it, I mentioned it to Jennifer. She thought I meant I'd sold a website template for a few $1,000s. When I started the venture fund, I invited Dad to lunch to discuss it. He spent the entire hour telling me about the importance of stable employment and retirement benefits. Eleanor's face had gone pale. I don't remember that. February 2022. We met at that Italian place downtown. You ordered the seafood risotto. My mother's eyes filled with tears, and I felt a pang of guilt. But this needed to be said. I learned to keep quiet because every time I spoke, someone in this family had already decided what my words would mean. I gestured around the room. You created this version of me, the lost youngest daughter, the dreamer, the one who needed help finding her way. It was easier to let you believe it than to constantly fight to be seen differently. Richard wasn't backing down. So what? You've been playing some kind of game, pretending to be poor while secretly sitting on hundreds of millions. I'm not sitting on it. I'm actively investing it, growing it, and using it to fund startups run by people who actually deserve support. I pulled out my phone, opening an email, including as of 3 weeks ago, a very promising AI integration company that approached me for Series A funding. I turned the screen toward Richard. His face went even grayer as he recognized the company name. Morrison Tech Solutions, I read aloud. They approached my venture fund, looking for $2 million in funding. Excellent team, solid business model, realistic projections. I was very impressed. Richard's voice came out strangled. That's my son's company. Your son David, yes, 26 years old, MIT graduate, brilliant mind for artificial intelligence applications. I smiled. He had no idea I was family. Used my fund's public submission process. Very professional. You funded my son's competitor. Richard looked ready to explode. I funded a promising startup. And before you ask, no, David has no idea we're related. He knows me as S.J. Harrison, managing partner of Apex Ventures. I've been very careful to keep my family connections separate from my business dealings. Jennifer was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Why? Because I wanted my investments to succeed on merit, not because of family politics. I looked at each of them in turn. David's company is genuinely good. His technology could revolutionize how mid-sized companies handle data integration. I'm proud to fund it. Thomas Winters spoke up again. Apex Ventures. You're S.J. Harrison. At my nod he let out a laugh. I've been trying to get a meeting with you for 8 months. Your fund has the best tech portfolio on the West Coast. Thank you. I turned back to Diane. So about the listing. I'd like to move forward with the 3.3 price point. The property's been recently renovated. I had the entire electrical system updated last year, new deck installed, kitchen completely redone, all without anyone in my family noticing, apparently. Richard found his voice. You can't just sell it. That house has been in this family for decades. It's been in my portfolio for 6 years. And yes, I absolutely can sell it. I softened slightly, though I'm open to hearing offers from family members, if anyone's actually interested in purchasing it legitimately. The look on Richard's face told me exactly how much liquid capital he had available, which, given what I knew about his spending habits and investment losses, was probably not much. My father stepped forward, and I saw something in his expression I'd rarely witnessed: respect mixed with confusion. Sarah, I need to understand something. If you've had this kind of success, this kind of wealth, for years, why did you keep coming to family dinners? Why did you let us talk to you like you were struggling? Because you're my family, I said quietly. Because I wanted to believe that eventually you'd see me for who I actually am, not who you assumed I was. Because I kept hoping that one day, one of you would ask about my life, instead of telling me what it should be. The silence that followed felt heavy with implications. My mother moved first, setting down her champagne, and crossing to me. For a moment I thought she might yell, or cry, or storm out. Instead she pulled me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, she whispered. You're right, we didn't listen. I didn't listen. Jennifer was next, tears streaming down her face. Sarah, I'm such an idiot. I've been pitying you for years, and you're more successful than any of us. I'm not competing with you, I said gently. I never was. The investors were discreetly excusing themselves, probably already looking up Apex Ventures on their phones. The party had definitely taken an unexpected turn from celebrating my father's retirement. Richard stood alone near the terrace, his face still that awful gray color. The beach house sale he'd been bragging about had just evaporated. The authority he'd assumed he had over family properties was revealed as fiction, and his nephew's company had just received major funding from the family member he'd dismissed as irrelevant. Dad approached him, putting a hand on his shoulder. Richard, I think you and I need to have a serious conversation about the family trust and property management. I was just trying to help, Richard said weakly. The house needed to be sold. It made financial sense. It wasn't yours to sell. Dad's voice was firm but not unkind, and apparently, it was being maintained just fine without our involvement. Diane Morrison closed her portfolio. Miss Harrison, shall I proceed with the listing as planned? I have several interested parties already, including 2 developers and a private buyer, looking for exactly this type of property. Yes, please proceed, though. I glanced at my parents. If Mom and Dad want to make an offer, I'd consider it. At fair market value. My mother shook her head, still holding my hand. No, sweetheart, you've earned that profit. Sell it and do something wonderful with the money. I'll probably just reinvest it, I admitted. There's a biotech startup in San Diego that's doing fascinating work with diagnostic AI. They need a second round of funding. Thomas Winters materialized beside us again. Miss Harrison, I know this is terrible timing, but my firm has been trying to reach you about a potential partnership. Any chance we could schedule a proper meeting? I pulled out my business card, the real one, with my full credentials listed. Have your people call my office. I'm always interested in discussing strategic partnerships. He studied the card, eyebrows rising. Board member of 3 tech companies, advisory positions at Stanford and MIT, founding partner of Apex Ventures. He looked up. Your family has no idea who you are, do they? They're learning, I said with a slight smile. The party continued, but the energy had completely shifted. People who'd ignored me all evening suddenly wanted to talk. Investors who'd dismissed me as the disappointment daughter were pulling up my fund's performance metrics on their phones. Junior associates from Dad's firm were asking how I'd gotten into venture capital. I answered politely, but mostly I watched my family process this new reality. Jennifer sat with Mark, whispering intensely. Patricia had cornered Diane Morrison, probably trying to get details on my other properties. My father stood with Richard, having what looked like a difficult but necessary conversation, and my mother kept finding excuses to touch my arm, as if confirming I was real. I really am proud of you, she said during a quiet moment. I just wish I'd known sooner, wish I'd asked instead of assumed. You can ask now, I offered. She smiled, but it was sad. I think I have a lot of listening to do first. As the party wound down, Diane approached with final paperwork for me to sign. The beach house would officially hit the market Monday morning. Based on current interest, she expected offers within the first week. One more thing, Diane said quietly. Your uncle made several calls from the terrace earlier. to people he described as backup buyers for the property. You might want to send a cease and desist letter, making it clear he has no authority to negotiate on your behalf. Already drafted, I assured her. My attorney will send it tomorrow. She grinned. I like how you operate, Miss Harrison. After she left, I found myself alone on the terrace, looking out at the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the water gold and crimson. It was beautiful, the kind of view that made $3 million seem almost reasonable. Sarah, I turned to find David, Richard's son, approaching hesitantly. We'd met at family gatherings over the years, but never spoke much. He was usually buried in his laptop, as uncomfortable with the family politics as I was. Hey David, so you're S.J. Harrison. He laughed, running a hand through his hair. I pitched my company to my own cousin, and had no idea. You pitched to a venture capitalist, who saw merit in your work, I corrected. The family connection is irrelevant to the business decision. Dad's pretty upset. Your dad tried to sell property he didn't own and got caught. That's on him, not on you. David leaned against the railing beside me. For what it's worth, I always thought you were the smart one. Everyone else was so obsessed with the family business, the family name, the family whatever. You just left, did your own thing. I respected that. Thanks. I meant it. Your company really is impressive, by the way. The data integration model is solid, and your team knows their stuff. You're going to do well, because you're funding us, because you built something worth funding. I looked at him seriously. Don't diminish your own work, David. You earned that investment. He nodded slowly. Apex Ventures has conditions about family involvement in funded companies. I read the contract. If I'd known you were family, would you have rejected my proposal? Probably, I admitted, not because you're not qualified, but because I've worked very hard to keep family and business separate. It protects everyone involved. Makes sense. He was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something? Off the record? Sure. How did you do it? Build all this without anyone knowing. The secrecy must have been exhausting. I considered the question carefully. It wasn't about secrecy, exactly. It was about protection. When you come from a family like ours, where business and personal are always tangled, where everyone has opinions about what you should do, sometimes the only way to build something real is to build it separately. Let it grow strong enough to stand on its own before exposing it to all the family dynamics. And now it's strong enough. I smiled. Turns out I didn't need their validation to succeed, but I'd still like their understanding, if they're willing to offer it. David nodded thoughtfully. Well, for what it's worth, you've got mine, and probably about 50 meeting requests by Monday morning, based on how many people just Googled you. He wasn't wrong. My phone was already buzzing with LinkedIn notifications and messages from investment firms. As the last guests departed, and my family gathered their things, my father approached me one final time. His retirement party had become something entirely different, a revelation, a reckoning, maybe even a new beginning. Sarah, I owe you an apology, he said. A big one. I've been running a financial consultancy for 4 decades, supposedly helping people understand and grow their wealth, and I completely missed that my own daughter had built an empire right under my nose. I didn't make it easy to see, I admitted. You shouldn't have had to. He shook his head. A good father pays attention, asks questions. I was so focused on my vision of who you were that I never looked at who you'd become. I'm still the same person, Dad. I just have better financial statements now. He laughed, but it was tinged with regret. Your mother and I would like to take you to dinner. Just the 3 of us. No business talk, no family politics, just us, getting to know our daughter as she actually is. I'd like that. And Sarah? He hesitated. That offer you made, about investing in promising startups run by people who deserve support. My firm has been looking at expanding our services, maybe adding a venture capital arm for our clients. Would you consider consulting, teaching us what you know? It was an olive branch, and I recognized it as such. Let me think about it. I need to make sure my existing commitments don't create conflicts of interest. Of course, professional boundaries. I understand. He smiled. I'm learning. As my family left the yacht club, I stayed behind for a few minutes, watching the sun complete its descent into the Pacific. Tomorrow, the beach house would list. Next week, David's company would receive their funding installment. Next month, the biotech startup in San Diego would probably close their Series B round with my participation. My life would continue exactly as it had been, building, investing, growing companies and opportunities. But maybe, just maybe, it would also include my family, seeing me clearly for the first time. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Can we meet for coffee? I want to hear everything. The real everything. No more assumptions. I smiled and typed back. Thursday at 10. That place you like downtown. Her response came immediately. Perfect. And Sarah, I'm really sorry. And really proud. The yacht club manager appeared, asking politely if I needed anything else. I thanked him and headed for the parking lot, where my 10-year-old Honda waited patiently. It might not be flashy, but it had carried me to every success I'd built, every meeting that mattered, every opportunity that shaped my empire. Some things didn't need to be impressive on the outside to be valuable. As I drove home through the darkening streets, I thought about Richard's gray face when Diane Morrison had exposed his attempted sale. The humiliation had been public and complete. Part of me felt guilty about that, but a larger part remembered every dismissive comment, every assumption, every time my family had decided who I was without bothering to ask. The beach house would sell for $3.3 million. After Diane's commission and capital gains taxes, I'd clear about $2.7 million. That would fund the biotech startup completely, with enough left over to seed 2 or 3 smaller ventures. Not bad for a property everyone in my family thought belonged to them. My phone rang as I pulled into my parking garage. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Miss Harrison, this is David Peterson. I hope it's okay that I got your number from the Apex Ventures contact sheet. It's fine, David. What's up? I just wanted to say thank you. Not for the funding. I mean, yes, thank you for that too, but for what you said earlier. About earning it. About not diminishing my own work. He paused. My dad has always been very critical. Nothing's ever quite good enough. Seeing him get taken down a peg tonight was cathartic, honestly. He's still your father, I said gently. Yeah, but maybe now he'll understand that success doesn't look just one way. That building something real matters more than family name or traditional prestige. David laughed. I learned that from watching you actually, even before I knew who you really were. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long moment, thinking about legacy and family, and the different ways people build their lives. My father had built a respected firm serving wealthy clients. My uncle had climbed the corporate ladder through family connections. My sister had married well and raised beautiful children. All valid paths, all worthy in their own ways. I'd just chosen a different one, quieter, more private, built on merit rather than name recognition, on results rather than relationships. And now that it was finally visible, my family would have to decide what they wanted to do with that knowledge. As I rode the elevator to my apartment, the modest one-bedroom in a building I owned, surrounded by graduate students and young professionals, who had no idea their landlord was a multimillionaire, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Hope that maybe my family could learn to see me as I actually was. Hope that David and others like him could build their dreams without the weight of family expectations crushing them. Hope that the beach house sale would fund discoveries that changed lives. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from my mother. I love you, Sarah. Exactly as you are. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. I smiled and typed back. Love you too, Mom. See you Thursday for dinner. Tomorrow the real world would intrude again. Investors to meet, startups to evaluate, properties to manage, and an uncle who probably wouldn't speak to me for months. But tonight, in my quiet apartment with the lights of the city spreading below, I allowed myself to feel satisfied. The beach house was mine. The empire was mine. And finally the truth was out. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just living well, building successfully, and waiting patiently for the moment when reality catches up to assumption. That moment had arrived at my father's retirement party, delivered by a realtor with a leather portfolio and a professional obligation to tell the truth. And honestly, it had been worth the 6-year wait.